smile I used to own. And there, just barely visible at the edge of the frame, a hand on her lower back that wasn't mine. I zoomed in until the pixels broke apart. Studied that hand like it held the secrets of the universe. Tried to identify it by the watch, the sleeve, the skin tone. Drove myself insane constructing entire narratives from 5 blurry fingers touching what used to be my territory. This wasn't love. I know that now. But that night, alone in a bed that still smelled faintly of her shampoo, I would have sworn on everything sacred that I had never felt anything more real. Before her, there was someone else. Someone kind, someone who showed up. Someone who died for everything right and made me feel absolutely nothing. We dated for 2 years. Shared an apartment with exposed brick and a kitchen we never cooked in. Our families had started asking about rings. Our friends called us goals. We looked perfect in photographs. And every night I lay next to her wondering if this was all there was. If love was just finding some intolerable and learning to stop wanting more. If the fire I craved only existed in movies and I needed to grow up and accept that real life was room temperature at best, I left her on a Tuesday. Gave her some speech about needing to find myself that we both knew was Ali. The truth was uglier. I left because I felt nothing, and feeling nothing felt like dying slowly in a beautiful cage. And before the kind one there was the first, the one I built entirely in my head. We never dated, not really. A few charged conversations. One almost kiss that still lives rent-free in my memory 2 decades later. I spent an entire year of my life in love with someone who existed mostly in my imagination. I wrote her into existence. Gave her depths she didn't have. Assigned meaning to her silences. Built a cathedral of hope on a foundation of maybe and what if, and the way she looked at me that one time at that party. When I finally told her how I felt, she looked at me like I was speaking a language she'd never learned, because I was. I had been having a relationship she knew nothing about, with a version of her that never existed outside my own desperate wanting. Asterisk 3 loves, 3 destructions. And that night at 3 a.m., phone burning in my hand, I finally saw the pattern I'd been living: obsession, convenience, fantasy, the 3 loves that had shaped my entire romantic life. The 3 loves that had broken me in different ways. The 3 loves that I would come tolan, break almost everyone. We don't talk about this. We talk about finding the one like it's a treasure hunt and not a minefield. We talk about love like it's a destination and not a series of beautiful disasters we're supposed to learn from. Nobody warned me that I would love wrong before I learned to love right, that I would have to destroy myself several times before I figured out how to stay whole. That the heart is not a compass pointing toward happiness, but a drunk driver who needs to crash a few times before learning to read the road. This book is about those crashes, not so you can avoid them. You probably can't. These 3 loves will find you the way gravity finds everything. They'll seduce you with their own particular poison. They'll feel so real you'll bet your whole life on them, and then they'll destroy you. The only question is whether you'll learn what they came to teach. Whether you'll recognize the destruction as education. Whether you'll let the fire burn away everything that isn't really you so that something true can finally grow in the ashes. I wrote this book at 3 a.m., in the wreckage, for anyone else who's there right now, phone in hand, heart in pieces, wondering how love could hurt this much and still be called love. It gets better. But first it has to make sense. Let me show you what's really happening to you. Partone obsession, the love that burns so bright it blinds you. YCHAPTERONE when intensity feels like destiny you met them and something unlocked. A door you didn't know existed swung open inside your chest, and suddenly everything before this moment felt like a rough draft of your life. This was the real thing. This was what all those songs were about. This was why people burned down kingdoms and started wars, and threw away everything sensible for one more night in someone's arms. Within weeks, maybe days, they became the sunnier entire world orbited. You woke up thinking about them. Fell asleep replaying conversations, checked your phone with a hunger that embarrassed you when you caught yourself doing it. Every notification could be them. Every silence felt like a small death, and it felt right, more right than anything had ever felt. The intensity wasn't a warning sign, it was proof that this was special. Proof that you had finally found something real in a world full of lukewarm. Settling and careful compromises. Everyone else was playing it safe. You were finally brave enough to burn. This is the seduction of obsessive love. It disguises itself as destiny. Here is what nobody tells you when you're in it. That feeling of certainty, that electric conviction that this person is meant for you. It has nothing to do with whether they're actually good for you. The intensity you are feeling isn't your soul recognizing its mate. It's your nervous system in a state of high alert. When we fall into obsessive love, our brains flood with dopamine, the same chemical that lights up in gambling addicts hitting the slots and cocaine users chasing the next line. The uncertainty of reciprocation creates a variable reward system. Will they text back, won't they? Are they pulling away or just busy? Each answer triggers another hit, and soon you're checking your phone like a rat pressing a lever in some sick experiment. The anxiety you feel when they go quiet for too long, that's withdrawal. The overwhelming relief when they finally reach out, that's your fix arriving. You're not in love, you're addicted, and like any Addict, you'll tell yourself 1,000 stories to justify why you can't stop. They're different. This is different. I've never felt this way before. We have a connection other people couldn't understand. The most dangerous lies are the ones that feel like truth. Obsessive love targets a specific wound. It finds that part of you that was never quite sure you were worthy of being chosen, and it presses directly on that bruise. If you grew up feeling unseen, obsessive love promises to finally be witnessed. If you were abandoned, it promises someone who will never leave. If you were told you were too much, it offers someone who seems to want all of you, every overwhelming inch. The cruelty is that it promises to heal what it actually exploits. You think you found the cure for your deepest loneliness, but what you've really found is someone whose inconsistency triggers your oldest fears over and over again. Every time they come close, your wound whispers, maybe I'm lovable after all. Every time they pull away, it screams, I knew it, I was never enough. This is not a love story. It's a trauma response you wearing a love story's clothes. I remember the first time I realized I was obsessed rather than in love. It was a small moment. I was at dinner with friends, and I laughed at someone's joke while simultaneously composing a text to her in my head, planning my words, rehearsing her possible responses, running scenarios like a general preparing for battle. I wasn't present in my own life. I was living in a simulation of our relationship, running infinite loops off what might happen next. My friends were talking and I nodded in the right places, but I was gone. I had left my body and taken up residence in the space between our last conversation and our next one. That's when I understood. This wasn't about her, not really. She had become a screen onto which it projected every unmet need I'd ever had. The real her, with her own fears and limitations and ordinary human messiness, had been almost entirely replaced by the her I needed her to be. Obsession doesn't want to know the other person, it wants to consume them, and in consuming them, it consumes you. The stories we tell ourselves about obsessive love are almost always wrong. We say, I've never connected with anyone like theirs. What we mean, their unavailability triggers my attachment wounds in a way that feels familiar and therefore profound. We say, they understand me like no one else. What we mean, I have shown them a carefully curated version of myself designed to make them stay, and they have responded to that performance. We say, when it's good, it's so good. What Wemian, the contrast between their affection and their distance creates an emotional rollercoaster I have mistaken for passion. We say, I can't live without them. What Wemian, I have abandoned myself so completely to this relationship that I no longer know who I am outside of it. Translation is brutal, but the truth doesn't soften just because we're not ready for it. There is a test I wish someone had given me years ago. Ask yourself, does this love make me bigger or smaller? Real love expands you. It gives you energy for your own life, your own dreams, your own becoming. You feel more yourself when you're with them, not less. Their presence in your life adds to what you're rebuilding rather than replacing it. Obsessive love shrinks you. It narrows your focus until they become the only thing you can see. Your friendships fade, your ambitions dim. The things that used to light you up feel grey and distant. You cancel plans to stay available. You drop hobbies because they don't involve this person. Slowly, steadily, your world gets smaller until they are all that's left, and you don't even notice it happening because the shrinking feels like focus. The narrowing feels like devotion. The disappearance of everything else feels like finally knowing what matters. But one day you look around and realize you have built your entire life on someone who may leave at any moment, and that's when the real terror begins. Obsession feels like destiny because we need it to. If it's just chemicals and wounds and fear of abandonment, then we're ordinary, broken in ordinary ways, struggling with ordinary demons. Beauty if it's fate. If this person was sent to us by the universe, then all this suffering means something. Then we're not addicts, we're protagonists. The human mind will do almost anything to avoid feeling ordinary pain. It will construct entire mythologies to transform that pain into meaning. Soulmates, twin flames, connections that transcend time and space. We build these stories because the alternative, that we've simply found someone whose damage interlocks with ours in a particularly devastating way, is too mundane to bear. But the mundane truth is usually where healing lives. Not in the stories we tell to elevate our suffering, but in the quiet acknowledgement that we are human beings with attachment styles and childhood wounds and nervous systems that sometimes lie to us about what love is supposed to feel like. Intensity is not the same as intimacy. Obsession is not the same as devotion. Desperation is not the same as desire. Learning to tell the difference might save your life. SCHAPTERTWO, the midnight version of Yao hasn't texted in 6 hours. 6 hours that feel like 6 years. You've checked your phone so many times that the screen has become an extension of your nervous system. A phantom limb pulsing with absence of her. You know you shouldn't check again. You checked it 30 seconds ago. Nothing has changed. Nothing will change in the next 30 seconds. And yet your thumb is already moving, already swiping, already looking for the notification that isn't there. This is not who you are at noon. At noon, you have your job and friends and opinions about things that matter. At noon, you are a functional adult who pays taxes and remembers birthdays and doesn't lose sleep over anyone. but midnight comes and someone else takes over, someone desperate, someone you barely recognize, someone willing to decode a single text message for hours, parsing punctuation like ancient scripture, finding meaning in the presence or absence of an emoji. The midnight version of you is who obsession creates when no one's watching. Let me tell you what that version has done, because who need to name it to see it clearly. The midnight version has scrolled through their social media at 2 a.m., studying who liked their posts, who commented, who might be competition. It has clicked on profile after profile of people they follow, looking for threats, looking for evidence, looking for anything that confirms the fear already living in your chest. The midnight version has drafted texts and deleted them, drafted and deleted, spent an hour crafting the perfect casual message that sounds like you definitely haven't been waiting by your phone for 6 hours. The midnight version knows exactly how long to wait before responding, so you don't seem too eager. It has turned communication into calculus. The midnight version has driven past their apartment, just to see if their car was there, just to see if the lights were on, just to know something, anything, when the silence became too loud to bear. It has told itself this wasn't stalking because love makes it different. Love makes everything different. The midnight version has read old messages until the screen blurred with tears, looking for the moment things changed, trying to find the exact sentence you heard they started pulling away. Rewinding their relationship like a film, studying each frame for clues it might have missed. The midnight version scares you, and it should. We become unrecognizable to ourselves in obsession. That's part of its violence. The person who swore they'd never beg finds themselves pleading for one more chance. The person who always had boundaries watches those boundaries dissolve like sugar in rain. The person who prided themselves on independence realizes they haven't made a single decision in months without wondering how it would affect this relationship. Who is this person? You think when you catch yourself mid-spiral, I don't act like this, I've never acted like this. What is wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. Or rather, nothing is wrong with you that isn't wrong with most people who have ever loved someone who felt slightly out of reach. Obsession doesn't target the weak. It targets the wounded, and all of us are wounded somewhere. The midnight version isn't a monster. It's the unhealed child inside you, desperate to finally be chosen. Willing to do anything, sacrifice dignity, abandon self-respect, shrink into whatever shape might make someone stay. Understanding this doesn't excuse the behavior, but it does explain it. And explanation is the first step toward change. There are things the midnight version does that the daylight version would never admit to anyone: the checking of location sharing, the memorization of their schedule, the careful monitoring of when they were last online. You've become a surveillance system pointed at one person, gathering data points that you assemble into a picture of their life without you. And for what? The information never helps. If they're online and not texting you, you spiral into why don't they want to talk to me? If they're offline, you spiral into what are they doing that's more important. The data feeds the anxiety rather than soothing it. Every new piece of information becomes fuel for a fire that was already burning. This is the thing about obsessive monitoring. It masquerades as control when it's actually the opposite. You think that if you just know enough, track enough, watch closely enough, you can predict their behavior, prevent abandonment, keep yourself safe, but you can't. No amount of surveillance will make someone love you. No amount of vigilance will stop someone from leaving if they've decided to go. All you're doing is trading your peace for an illusion of power. And the exchange rate is devastating. The body keeps score. That's not just a book title. It's the literal truth of what obsession does to your physical self. Notice what happens when they go quiet. The tightness in your chest, the shallow breathing, the way your stomach drops like you're falling from a great height. Your body responds to their silence the way it would respond to a physical threat because to your nervous system, it is one. When someone becomes the source of your emotional regulation, their absence dysregulates you at a biological level. You're not being dramatic. You're not overreacting. Your body genuinely believes it's in danger, and it's doing what bodies do in danger, flooding you with cortisol and adrenaline, preparing you to fight or flee. The problem is that there's nothing to fight and nowhere to flee to. So you just sit there, marinating in stress hormones, refreshing your phone, waiting for relief that only they can provide. You've outsourced your nervous system's off switch to another person, and they don't even know they're holding it. Friends start to notice. They've seen this before, maybe with you, maybe with others. They know signs. The way you steer every conversation back to this person. The way your mood visibly shifts when your phone buzzes. The way you've stopped being available for anything that might conflict with seeing them, talking to them, waiting for them. They try to say something gently at first. Okay, you seem really consumed by this. I'm worried about you, and you hear their concern, but it doesn't land. They don't understand. They don't know what this feels like. They've never had a connection like this one. Their worry is evidence that they've never really loved anyone the way you love this person. This is how obsession isolates you. It convinces you that no one could possibly comprehend the depth of what you're feeling, so why bother trying to explain? It draws a circle around you and this other person, and tells you that everyone outside that circle is irrelevant. that their opinions are the opinions of people who have never truly lived. You push away the people who love you consistently to chase the one whose love is a question mark, and somehow this feels like loyalty rather than self-destruction. The worst part isn't the behavior. The worst part is the shame that comes after. The morning after reckoning when you look at your phone and see the 4 unanswered texts you sent at 3 a.m. The cringe of realizing you've checked their Instagram story 17 times. The hollow feeling of knowing you drove past their place again, or scrolled through their ex's photos again, or reread that conversation again, hoping to find something new in words you've already memorized. The shame doesn't stop the behavior. It just adds another layer to it. Now you're not only obsessed, you're obsessed and humiliated by your own obsession. You're spiraling about the spiral, hating yourself for the very feelings you can't seem to control, and the cruelest part, the shame makes you need them more, because they're the only one who could make this feeling go away. If they would just text back, just show up, just choose you clearly and consistently, you could stop being this pathetic version of yourself. You could be normal again, whole again. You've made them the solution to a problem they are causing, and you'll keep drinking the poison hoping it will become the cure. There will come a night, maybe it's already come, when you look in the mirror and don't recognize the person looking back, eyes hollow from insufficient sleep, face drawn from the anxiety you've been carrying like a second skeleton, thoughts racing so fast you can't catch any single one long enough to examine it, just a blur off what did I do wrong and why don't they want me and maybe if I just and I can't keep living like this. That person in the mirror is you, and also not you. They're the version of you that obsession built when you weren't paying attention. A version who has made in person the entire axis of their world and is now being spun off that axis, dizzy and lost and grabbing for anything stable. That night will be rock bottom or it will be a stepping stone to an even lower floor. Both are possible. What happens next depends on whether you're willing to see what you've become and decides that you deserve better, not better than them, better than this. CHAPTERTHREE love is not supposed to feel like drowning somewhere along the way. You learn that love should hurt, that suffering proves depth, that if it doesn't feel like you're dying, you must not really be live. Movies taught you this. Songs taught you this. Every great romance you consumed growing up involved obstacles and anguish and the kind of longing that hollows you out. Romeo didn't just like Juliet, he killed himself for her. Heathcliff didn't just want Catherine, he destroyed everyone around him trying to possess her ghost. We romanticize destruction. We call it passion. So when you found someone who made you feel like you were losing your mind, you thought, finally something real, finally something that matters. All those comfortable relationships before. This were just practice. This is what it's supposed to feel like, but here's the truth nobody put in those stories. Love is not supposed to feel like drowning, and if you're drowning, it's not love. Passion and obsession wear similar clothes, but they are not the same animal. Passion is desire. It's wanting someone, being drawn to them, feeling that magnetic pull when they walk into a room. Passion is heat and hunger and the sweet ache of anticipation. It lives in the body. It energizes you. Obsession is fear. It's the terror of losing someone, the desperate need to keep them close, the compulsion to monitor and control because you can't survive them leaving. Obsession is anxiety dressed as devotion. It lives in your spinning thoughts. It depletes you. Passion wants to be with them. Obsession can't stand to be without them. The difference sounds subtle, but it's the difference between breathing and suffocating. When you're passionate about someone, their absence makes you miss them. When you're obsessed with someone, their absence makes you panic. Passion can wait. Obsession cannot. Passion trusts. Obsession surveils. Most of us have never been taught that this distinction exists, so we feel the panic and call it passion. We feel the suffocation and call it depth. There's a specific moment when desire tips into inspiration. It's different for everyone, but it follows a pattern. First comes the intoxication. Everything about them fascinates you. You want to know everything, absorb everything, be around them constantly. This feels like falling in love, and maybe it is. The early stages of connection are supposed to be consuming. That's not the problem. The problem comes when they pull back slightly, as everyone eventually does, because humans need space, because life has demands, because nobody can sustain the intensity of early romance forever, and instead of adjusting, you cling harder. That's the moment. That's when love curdles into obsession. Not when they withdraw, but when you respond to the withdrawal by losing yourself completely. Healthy attachment can hold space. It can tolerate some distance without interpreting it as abandonment. It can say I miss you without collapsing into I can't survive without you. But when attachment is wounded, when your nervous system was trained in childhood to interpret any distance as danger, the withdrawal feels like a threat to your existence. And you respond the way any animal responds to existential threat, with desperation. The thing about drowning is that you don't choose it. You don't decide to flail and gasp and grab onto anything nearby. Your body does it automatically. Survival takes over. Obsession works the same way. You don't sit down and plan to check their social media 40 times a day. You don't decide to lie awake for hours analyzing what they meant by okay. You don't choose to become someone who waits by their phone like their life depends on the next notification. It just happens. The anxious attachment system kicks in, the fear of abandonment takes the wheel, and suddenly you're doing things that your rational mind knows are insane but your emotional brain can't stop. This is why willpower alone doesn't fix obsession. You can't just decide to stop drowning. You have to be pulled out of the water first. When you're drowning, everything looks like a rope, a text from them, rope. A like on your post, rope, an emoji in their story that might be about you. Rope, you grab onto anything that might save you, anything that might mean they still want you, anything that might pull you back to the surface for one more breath, but none of these things are ropes. They're debris, floating pieces of a wreck that can't actually hold your weight. You grab them and feel momentary relief, and then you're sinking again, scanning the water for the next piece of wreckage to cling to. The only actual rope is the one you have to throw yourself. The decision to stop swimming toward someone who's watching you drown. The choice to turn around and swim for shore, even though shore looks impossibly far and they look impossibly close. No one can rescue you from obsession but you. That's the cruelest and most liberating truth of this whole mess. Real love has a quality of ease that obsession can never replicate. Not easy, love is never entirely easy, but ease, a fundamental sense that you are safe, that you don't have to perform constantly to keep their attention, that their feelings for you don't evaporate every time you're out of sight. In healthy love, you can breathe. You can have a bad day without fearing they'll leave. You can go silent for a few hours without calculating how that silence will be interpreted. You can be yourself, your full unedited self, without worrying that the real you will drive them away. Obsession offers none of this. Obsession is constant calculation, constant performance, constant fear that you're one wrong move away from losing everything. It masquerades as intensity when it's actually just anxiety with a better marketing team. If you're exhausted by your relationship, that's a signal. Love shouldn't drain you to the point of collapse. It shouldn't leave you a shell of who you were before you met them. There's a question I want you to sit with. When you imagine them loving you fully, consistently, without the push and pull, do you still want them? Really think about it. Imagine they text you back immediately every time. Imagine they tell you exactly how they feel, clearly and often. Imagine there's no mystery, no anxiety, no desperate wondering. Just two people who know they want each other. Does that image excite you or bore you? For some of us, the honest answer is that it bores us. That the chase is the thing, that we confuse the adrenaline of uncertainty with the depth of connection. That we're not actually in love with this person, we're in love with trying to win this person. This is a painful thing to admit. It means the feelings we thought were so profound are actually just symptoms of a game we're playing with ourselves. It means we've been chasing a high rather than building a life, but admitting it is the first step to breaking the pattern. Because once you see that you're chasing adrenaline rather than love, you can start asking yourself why adrenaline feels more real to you than peace. The hardest lesson I ever learned about love is that intensity and depth are not the same thing. Intensity is a spike. It's dramatic and all-consuming and it makes for great stories. But spikes crash. They have to. Nothing can sustain that level of activation forever. Depth is steady. It builds slowly. It's less cinematic, no sweeping soundtracks, no dramatic declarations in the rain. But depth is what holds you through ordinary Tuesday afternoons and difficult seasons and the long middle years of a life shared with another person. We've been taught to value intensity because it photographs better, because it fits into a 2-hour movie, because it makes us feel alive in a way that depth's quiet accumulation doesn't advertise itself, but intensity burns out. Depth remains. The love that feels like drowning will eventually pull you under for the last time. The love that feels like solid ground might not make your heart race. Beauty will still be there when the racing stops. You're allowed to want more than this. You're allowed to want a love that doesn't make you sick with anxiety. A love that doesn't require you to abandon yourself. A love that feels like home rather than a house fire. You've been told that what you're feeling is the height of romance. That this suffering is what poets wrote about. That everyone would be lucky to feel what you feel. They're wrong. What you're feeling is your nervous system in crisis. What you're doing is mistaking fear for devotion. What you're living is not a love story, it's a survival story, and you're barely surviving. Love is not supposed to feel like drowning. If you remember nothing else from this chapter, remember that. Write it on your mirror, tattoo it on your wrist, say it out loud until you believe it, because the day you finally believe it is the day you start swimming toward shore. ICHAPTERFOU are how to survive someone you wanting you know you need to stop. Every rational thought you have left tells you this isn't healthy, isn't sustainable, isn't going anywhere good. Your friends are tired of watching it. Your body is exhausted from the constant state of alert. Your life has become a waiting room for someone who may never call your name. But knowing you need to stop and being able to stop are entirely different things. Obsession doesn't respond to logic. You can list 100 reasons why this person isn't right for you, and your heart won't hear a single one. You can know with absolute certainty that you're destroying yourself, and still find yourself reaching for your phone, still find yourself hopping, still find yourself one more text away from rock bottom. This chapter is for that moment, the moment when you know you have to let go and can't remember how to open your hand. First, stop expecting the wanting to go away. It won't, not for a while. You've trained your brain to see this person as essential to your survival, and brains don't forget that kind of programming overnight. The craving will stay. The thoughts will keep coming. The pull toward them will continue even after you decide to walk away. This isn't weakness. This is withdrawal. And like any withdrawal, it has to be survived rather than solved. You will want them tomorrow. You will want them next week. You might want them in the quiet hours for months to come. But wanting something doesn't mean you have to pursue it. You can want them and still choose yourself. You can ache for them and still walk the other direction. The wanting is a feeling. What you do about it is a choice. Go cold turkey or don't bother. I'm not going to tell you to gradually reduce a contact, to slowly wean yourself off them, to take item day at a time. That approach might work for quitting sugar, but it doesn't work for obsession. Every interaction resets the clock. Every text exchanged, every time you check their social media, every just one more look puts you back at day one. Your brain can't start healing while you keep reinfecting the wound. Block them. Mute them. Delete their number if you have to. Remove every pathway your obsession could use to reach them. Not because they're a bad person, maybe they're not, but because you cannot trust yourself right now and you need to make the choice impossible rather than just difficult. This will feel like dying. It's not. It's surgery without anesthesia. It hurts more than anything at first, but it's the only thing that actually heals. The first 3 days are the worst, then the first 3 weeks, then it gets easier. Mark it on a calendar if you need to. Watch their days accumulate. Every day without contact is a day your neural pathways start to rewire. Every day off silence is a day your nervous system learns that you can survive without them. You will not feel better at first. You'll feel worse. You'll feel like something essential has been ripped away and you're bleeding out slowly in a room where no one can hear you. This is normal. This is the addiction screaming for its fix. Do not give in. The screaming stops eventually, but only if you let it run its course. Fill the space they used to occupy, not to distract yourself, but to remember who you were before they became everything. Call the friends you've neglected. Go back to the gym you abandoned. Pick up the hobbies you dropped when they became your only hobby. Start rebuilding the life you dismantled to make room for someone who never fully moved in. At first, everything will feel pointless. Nothing will have the same intensity as they did. That's because our dopamine system is recalibrating. It's used to the spikes of obsessive love and everything else feels flat by comparison. Do it anyway. The flatness is temporary. The life you're rebuilding is permanent. Get angry. Seriously, not at them necessarily, though maybe they deserve it, but at the situation, at the waste, at all the hours you spent waiting for someone who had you waiting. At all the sleep you lost, the friendships you strained, the versions of yourself you abandoned to become someone they might want. Obsession runs on longing. Anger cuts through longing like nothing else can. Let yourself be furious that you gave so much to someone who gave so little back. Let yourself rage at the unfairness of a heart that wants what hurts it. Let yourself feel the healthy, protective anger that says, I'd serve better than this. Anger gets a bad reputation, but righteous anger, the kind that defends your own dignity, can be the fuel that carries you out of the wreckage when nothing else will. You'll relapse, expect it. One night you'll be doing fine and then a song will play or a memory will surface and before you know it you're on their Instagram, scrolling through photos you've seen 100 times, feeling all the old feelings flood back like no time has passed at all. This doesn't mean you failed. This means you're a human. Recovery isn't a straight line, it's a jagged path with setbacks built in. What matters isn't whether you relapse. What matters is how long you stay relapsed. Can you catch yourself mid-spiral and put the phone down? Can you feel the pull and choose not to follow it? Can you have a bad night without turning it into a bad week? Progress is measured in recovery time. The elapses get shorter. The bouncing back gets faster. And one day you'll realize the urge came and went without you even noticing. Find someone to tell, someone who won't judge. Someone who will let you say the embarrassing things out loud without making you feel small for thinking them. Obsession thrives in secrecy. It grows in the dark corners where you hide your worst thoughts from everyone, including yourself. The simple act of saying it out loud, I can't stop thinking about them. I checked their location 14 times today. I'm scared I'll never feel this way about anyone else. Begins to dissolve its power. This might be a therapist. It might be a friend who's been there. It might be a support group or a journal or a stranger on the internet who understands. It doesn't matter who, as long as someone knows the truth of what you're going through. Secrets keep us sick. Speaking them is how we start to heal. And finally, grieve not just the person, though yes, grieve them too, but the version of yourself that existed in their relationship. The hopes you had, the future you imagined, the story you wrote where this was the love that changed everything. That story is dying. Let it die. Cry the tears you've been holding back. Feel the loss you've been trying to outrun. Let yourself be devastated by the ending of something that, despite all its dysfunction, meant something to you. Grief is not weakness. Grief is how the heart processes loss. If you try to skip it, it will wait for you. Better to walk through it now than to carry it unprocessed for years. Here is what I can promise you. It does end. Not today. Not next week. Maybe not even next month. But there will come a morning when you wake up and they're not your first thought. A day when you see their name and feel nothing but a distant ache like a scar that no longer bleeds. A moment when you realize you've become yourself again. The self-yower before they took up all the space. That moment is coming. Everything you're doing now is building toward it. Every day of no contact, every urge you don't act on, every time you choose yourself over the pull of wanting them. You are surviving someone you can't stop wanting, and in the surviving, you're becoming someone you couldn't have become any other way, stronger, clearer, finally free, PRTTW convenience, the love that feels safe but slowly suffocates. HCHAPTERFIVE, the relationship that looks perfect on paper, checks every box. Good job, kind to your mother, remembers your coffee order, shows up when he says he will, never makes you cry at 3 am, never makes you feel like you're losing your mind, your friends adore him. Your family has stopped asking when you're getting married because they assume it's just a matter of time. Everyone looks at that of you and sees something stable, something enviable, something that works. And you look at the two of you and feel nothing, not pain, not passion, not the devastating highs or catastrophic lows of the relationships that came before, just a kind of pleasant numbness, a low hum of contentment that never rises to joy and never falls to despair, a flatline where your heart should be. This is convenience love, the relationship that makes perfect sense to everyone except the part of you that still remembers what it felt like to be fully alive. We end up here for 100 reasons, all of them sensible. We are tired. Tired of the chaos, tired of getting hurt, tired of playing games with people who don't know what they want. After enough rounds of obsession and heartbreak, stability starts to look less like settling and more like survival. We are scared. The dating pool feels shallow. Their good ones seem taken. The clock is ticking, whether it's biological or just the social pressure that says you should have it figured out by now. Convenience love offers a guarantee in a marketplace that offers none. We're practical. We've grown up. We've realized that the movies lied about love and that real relationships require compromise and that maybe expecting fireworks forever is childish and we should just appreciate someone who treats us well. All of these reasons sound mature. None of them mention desire. None of them mention that feeling in your chest when the right person walks into a room. None of them mention the quiet grief of choosing safety over aliveness. The problem with convenience love is that it makes so much sense, you can defend it endlessly, to yourself, to your skeptical friends, to the voice in your head that whispers at midnight that something is missing. Every time doubt surfaces, you can push it back down with logic. He's a good person. Lots of people would kill for what you have. Passion fades anyway, right? At least you're not being treated badly. At least you're not alone. At least, the arguments are airtight, the case is closed. And still a quiet voice keeps reopening it, keeps wondering, keeps looking at your life and feeling like you're watching someone else live it. That whisper won't stop because you can't logic your way out of loneliness. You can't argue yourself into desire. You can't list enough pros to make the absence of feeling feel like fullness. The heart wants what it wants, and when it wants more than you're giving it, no amount of rational justification will silence that wanting. Let me paint you a picture, see if you recognize it. You come home after work. He's there or she's there and you say the things you always say. How was your day? Fine, what do you want for dinner? I don't know, what do you want? The conversation has grooves worn into it from years of repetition. You could do it in your sleep, you practically are. You sit on opposite ends of the couch. You scroll through your phones, the TV plays something neither of you is really watching. Every now and then one of you laughs at something on your screen and the other doesn't ask what. You've stopped asking. There's nothing new to discover. At some point you go to bed. Maybe you have sex, the kind of sex that happens because it's Tuesday and it's been a week and it seems like you should. Efficient, familiar, over quickly. You roll to your side sand, charge your phones, and someone says goodnight and you realize you've barely looked at each other all evening. This is your life, this is what you chose instead of the chaos. And lying there in the dark you can't help but wonder if chaos might have been better. Convenience love sells itself as the mature choice, their grown-up choice, the choice that people make after they have gotten the drama out of their system. But maturity isn't the same as numbness. Grown-up love shouldn't mean giving up on feeling. The absence of chaos shouldn't require the absence of passion. Somewhere we learn that we have to choose excitement or stability. Fire or safety, fully alive or comfortably dead. We learn that wanting both was greedy. That expecting to feel desired and secure simultaneously was a fantasy for people who hadn't yet faced reality. This is a lie. A convenient lie that makes settling feel like wisdom. A lie that benefits everyone who wants you to stop searching for something that might actually make you happy. You can have stability without suffocation. You can have safety without boredom. You can have a relationship that looks good on paper and feels good in your bones. These things are not mutually exclusive, but you'll never find them if you've convinced yourself they don't exist. The cruelest thing about convenience love is that it's hard to leave. There's no villain. No one is being cruel or unfaithful or obviously wrong. You can't point to a crime. You can only point to an absence, and absences are so much harder to justify walking away from. How do you explain to someone that you're leaving not because they did something bad, but because they don't make you feel anything? How do you tell the person who has been kind and reliable and present that kindness and reliability and presence aren't enough? It makes you feel like a monster. like you're ungrateful, like you're throwing away something good in pursuit of something that might not exist. Thewald will tell you that you're making a mistake, that you'll regret it. That you don't know how hard it is out there and you should appreciate what you have, and maybe they're right. Maybe you will regret it, maybe the grass isn't greener, but maybe. You'll find something that doesn't require you to amputate parts of yourself to fit into it, and that possibility might be worth the risk. There's a question you need to ask yourself, and you need to answer it honestly. Is this enough? Not is this good? Not is this better than being alone? Not would most people be happy with this? Is this enough for you, for your one wild and precious life, for the years you have left, for the person you could become if you gave yourself permission to want more? Maybe the answer is yes. Maybe what you have is genuinely enough, and the problem is that you've been conditioned to think you need fireworks when contentment is actually the goal. That's a real possibility. Not everyone needs passion. Not everyone wants intensity. Some people genuinely thrive in quiet waters. But if the answer is no, if you sit with the question and your gut clenches with the knowledge that this isn't it, this isn't what you imagined, this isn't who you wanted to become, then you have a decision to make. Stay comfortable and slowly disappear, or walk into the unknown and see what's waiting there. FCHAPTERSIX dying quietly in a nice apartment from the outside, everything looks fine. Better than fine, the apartment is tasteful. The photos on Instagram are curated. Friends comment things like, you two are goals, and you smile and say thank you and don't mention that you've forgotten what it feels like to be genuinely happy. This is what dying quietly looks like. Not a dramatic death, no screaming, no throwing things, no obvious crisis, just a slow fade, a gradual dimming. A life that looks like a life but feels like a waiting room. You wake up next to someone you used to choose and now just tolerate. You perform the rituals of partnership without feeling them. You've become so skilled at going through the motions that you've almost convinced yourself the motions are enough, almost. The worst part isn't the absence of love. You do love them in a way. The way you love a childhood blanket or a familiar chair. The way you love things that have been in your life so long they've become indistinguishable from the furniture. The worst part is the absence of wanting. The flat, grey expanse of days where nothing surprises you, where you know exactly what they're going to say before they say it. Where the sex, when it happens, feels like scratching an itch rather than reaching for something transcendent. You've lost the capacity to be curious about this person. They've become fully mapped territory. There are no more questions to ask because you already know all the answers. The mystery that once drew you in has been replaced by a predictability that feels like a prison, and you can't even blame them. They haven't changed, you've just stopped looking. There are nights when you lie awake doing the math. How many years have you been doing this? How many more years might you do it? What would it cost to leave, financially, socially, emotionally? What would it cost to stay? The cost of staying never shows up on a spreadsheet. It's measured in moments you'll never urge it back, in the slow erosion of your capacity for joy, in the person you're becoming year by year as you settle deeper into a life that fits you like the wrong size coat. You tell yourself you can survive this, and you can. That's the tragedy. You can survive almost anything. Humans are remarkably good at enduring lives that don't fulfill them. We adapt, we adjust, we lower our expectations until they match our reality and call the lowering growth. But survival isn't the same as living, and Yao didn't come here just to survive. The silence is the loudest part, not the hostile silence of couples who fight. That silence has energy, at least. It bristles with unsaid things. It's alive with conflict. This is different. This is the silence of two people who have run out of things to say, who sit across from each other at dinner and let the clink of forks fill the space where conversation used to be, who can spend entire evenings in the same room without exchanging more than logistics. You used to talk for hours. Remember, you used to stay up too late, trading stories, discovering each other, astonished that another human couldn't understand you this well. Now you can barely remember what you talked about. It feels like it happened to different people. In a way it did. You've thought about other people. Of course Yao have, not necessarily acted on it, though maybe Yao have in small ways, in flirtations you told yourself were innocent, in emotional connections you justified as friendship. But even if you haven't crossed any lines, your mind has wandered. To that coworker who makes you laugh, to the stranger at the coffee shop who looked at you like you were worth looking at. Anyone who reminds you that you're still capable of feeling something. This isn't a moral failing. This is your heart trying to stay alive, seeking oxygen wherever it can find it because the relationship is suffocating it slowly. The question isn't whether it's wrong to think about other people. The question is why your current relationship has become a place you need to escape from, even if only in your mind. The cruelest trap of convenience love is that it looks like contentment. From the outside, there's nothing to fix, no drama to resolve, no problem to solve. Just were people who get along fine and share a lease and have figured out how to coexist without conflict. But the absence of conflict isn't the same as the presence of connection. You can be perfectly compatible and profoundly lonely. You can share a bed and feel like you're sleeping alone. You can build a whole life with someone and still feel like you're the only one living in it. People will tell you that this is what long-term relationships look like. that the passion fades and what remains is partnership, and you should be grateful for partnership, and maybe they're right for some relationships. Maybe some love stories end in comfortable companionship and that's enough, but your gut knows the difference between enough and barely surviving, and if you're honest, you know which one you're living. There's a moment that often comes in convenience relationships, a moment of clarity that breaks through the fog. Maybe you're at a party and you watch your partner from across the room and feel nothing. Not love, not hate, not even annoyance. Just a hollow recognition of someone you share an address with. Maybe you're watching a movie where two people fall in love and you realize you've forgotten what that feels like. Not the movie version, the real version. The version where someone looks at you and your whole body lights up. Maybe you're just having an ordinary evening doing the ordinary things you always do, and suddenly it hits you. This is it. This is your life. This quiet desperation stretched out for decades. This slow evaporation of everything that makes you you. That moment is terrifying. It's also a gift, because finally you can't pretend anymore. Finally you have vetoed decide what to do with the truth. Asterisk dying quietly in a nice apartment is still dying. The comfort of your surroundings doesn't make the deathless real. And here's the thing about this kind of death, it's voluntary. You're choosing it day after day by not choosing something else. By staying in a relationship that has stopped nourishing you. By convincing yourself that this is just what life is like. It doesn't have to be. Your aliveness is worth fighting for. Your capacity for joy is worth protecting. The years you have left are worth spending with Somyeon, who makes you feel like they're worth spending. The apartment is nice. The life looks good on paper, but paper doesn't keep you warm at night. Anness isn't enough to build a life on. You deserve more than dying quietly. You deserve to live out loud. TCHAPTERSEVEN. The lies we tell ourselves to stay, stories we tell ourselves about why we stay, inconvenience, love are masterpieces of self-deception. We've rehearsed them so many times they feel like truth. We've polished them until they shine with reasonableness. We believe them because the alternative, admitting we're trapped, is too painful. Tofface, let me name the lies, one by one, so you can see them for what they are. All relationships get boring. This is the lie that kills more possibility than any author. The one that convinces you that what you're feeling isn't a signal that something's wrong, it's just what happens when the honeymoon phase ends. Yes, relationships change. The frantic early energy stalls into something calmer. The constant texting becomes comfortable silence. The desperate need to be together every moment eases into a rhythm of togetherness and independence. But there's a difference between settling into comfort and sinking into boredom. Comfort still has warmth. Comfort still has connection. Comfort still has desire, even if that desire has mellowed from a bonfire to a steady flame. Boredom has none of this. Boredom is going through the motions. Boredom is feeling nothing when they walk through the door. Boredom is realizing you'd rather be alone than in their company, and then staying anyway because you've confused their presence with partnership. Not all relationships get boring. Some relationships deepen. Some relationships become more interesting as you discover new dimensions of Somyeon you thought you already knew. If yours has become boring, that's information, not inevitability. Passion fades anyway. Another convenient lie. Another excuse to accept less. The truth is more complicated. Passion dosage, the specific chemical cocktail of early infatuation, the dopamine rush, the obsessive thoughts, the inability to eat or sleep, that fades. Ithers too. No nervous system could sustain that level of arousal indefinitely, but desire, connection, the ability to look at your partner and feel that pull in your stomach, that warmth in your chest, that doesn't have to disappear. Some couples maintain desire for decades. They're not lucky, they're intentional. They've chosen to keep choosing each other rather than letting familiarity become contempt. If your passion has faded completely, if there's no spark left, no attraction, no wanting, that's not just how it goes. That's a symptom of disconnection. And disconnection can be healed, but only if you're willing to name it rather than normalize it. At least they're loyal. Loyalty is a minimum, not a prize. Being faithful to Somyeon you've committed to isn't exceptional, it's the baseline. It's what you're supposed to do. And yet we use it as a reason to stay in relationships that give us nothing else. They don't make us laugh. They don't make us think. They don't make us feel seen or desired or alive. But they come every night, so we should be grateful. Loyalty without love is a prison sentence. Two people who don't betray each other while slowly ding inside. Congratulations on your loyalty. What good is it if you're both miserable? You don't owe someone your whole life just because they didn't cheat on you. That's not how relationships work. That's how debts work. And you are not a debt to be collected. I've already invested so much. The sunk cost fallacy, now dressed in a wedding ring and a shared mortgage. Yes, you've invested. Years, energy, compromises. A whole life built around this person and the assumption that this person would be your person forever. Walking away means admitting that investment didn't pay off the way you hoped. It means grieving the future you planned. But staying doesn't protect your investment. It just throws more years after the ones you've already spent. The time is gone whether you stay or leave. The only question is what you do with the time that remains. The past is a sunk cost. The future is still available. Don't let loyalty to who you were stop you from becoming who you could be. What if I never find anyone else? Fear dressed as pragmatism. The terror that this might be your last chance at love, so you'd better cling to it no matter how little it gives you. Let me offer a different question. What if you never find yourself while you're busy hiding in a relationship that doesn't see you? Being alone is a possibility, a real one. Note Vion finds partnership again. The dating world is brutal and exhausting and full of disappointments. These are facts, but there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. You can be alone and still feel whole. You can be alone and still have a rich life full of friends and meaning and moments of deep joy. You can be alone and still be yourself, which is more than you can say right now, trapped in a relationship where you've disappeared. Loneliness in partnership is a special kind of hell. At least loneliness alone has room to breathe. It's not that bad, the most insidious lie of all, because it's technically true. It's not that bad, there's no abuse, no obvious cruelty. Nothing you could point to and say this is unacceptable. But not that bad is an awfully low bar for a life. That bad is what you say about a restaurant you'd never return to. Not that bad is how you describe a movie that wasted 2 hours of your evening. Not that bad is not how you should describe the relationship that holds the best years off your life. We've been taught to only leave bad relationships, the ones with screaming matches, the ones with affaires, the ones where someone crosses a clear line. If none of those things are happening, we think we're have to stay. But the absence of bad isn't the presence of good. A relationship that isn't actively harmful can still be slowly deadening. A partner who isn't cruel can still be profoundly wrong for you. Not that bad can still be pedestrianing your life, just so gradually you don't notice until you've wasted decades. They need me. Sometimes this is true. Sometimes your partner has built their entire life around you and genuinely doesn't know how they'd function alone. That's not your responsibility. You are not a life support system. You are not rehabilitation. You are not required to sacrifice your own aliveness to keep another person from having to grow. If they need you more than they love you, if your relationship is based on dependency rather than desire, you're not their partner. You're their crutch, and crutches get discarded the moment someone learns to walk again. You staying doesn't help them. It just delays their growth they need to do. The kindest thing you can give someone who has made you their whole world is the chance to discover they can build their own. I'm not telling you to leave, only you know if leaving is right, only you can weigh the costs against the possibilities, but I am asking you to stop lying to yourself about where you're staying, because every lie you tell yourself is a chain, and the chains get heavier with time. If you're staying, stay for real reasons. Stay because you genuinely believe this relationship can be revived. Stay because you want to fight for it, not because you're afraid to let it go. Stay with your eyes open, not with stories that help you keep them closed. And if the real reason you're staying is fear of the unknown, fear of loneliness, fear of admitting you made a mistake, then at least have the courage to call it what it is. Fear is honest. Lies are not. LCHAPTEREIGHT. The courage to want more. Even a convenience relationship is one of the hardest things you'll ever do. Not because the relationship is so good, but because the stakes are so high and the justification feels so thin. You're not leaving because they hit you. You're not leaving because they cheated. You're leaving because you feel nothing, and feeling nothing has become unbearable. You're leaving because you want more, and wanting more feels selfish in a world that celebrates settling. It is not selfish to want a life that makes you feel alive. It is not selfish to want a partner who sees you. It is not selfish to believe that the years you have left deserve to be filled with something more than comfortable numbness. Wanting more is not selfish. Wanting more is human. And the courage to pursue it might be the most important thing you ever do. The first obstacle is guilt. It will hit you before you even open your mouth to say the words. They haven't done anything wrong. They've shown up, been faithful, done their best. And you're going to break their heart because your heart isn't in it anymore. You're going to turn their world upside down because you want something you can't even name. This guilt is real. Don't try to argue yourself out of it. You are going to hurt someone who doesn't deserve to be hurt. That's the price of this decision, and there's no way around it. But staying out of guilt hurts them too. It just doses it slowly. It gives them years with someone who isn't partially present. It robs them of the chance to often someone who actually wants them. The kindest thing you can do for both of you is to stop pretending. Then comes the fear of being alone, fear of being wrong, fear that you're throwing away something good for a fantasy that doesn't exist. What if you leave and realize you made a terrible mistake? What if the dating world is even worse than you remember? What if you never find anyone hot treats you as well as they did? What if good enough was actually as good as it gets and you gave it up for nothing? These fears are valid. They deserve to be taken seriously. But they don't deserve to make your decisions for you. Fear predicts catastrophe. It doesn't account for resilience. It doesn't remember that you've survived every hard thing that's ever happened to you. It doesn't believe in your ability to build a life worth living on your own terms. You might leave and regret it. You might also leave and discover that life on the other side is bigger than you imagined. The only way to know is to go. The conversation will be awful. There's no way to make it not awful. They will ask why and you won't have a good answer. I don't feel anything sounds like an accusation even when it isn't. I want more sounds like you're calling them insufficient. Every explanation will feel either too brutal or too vague, and they'll look at you with confusion and hurt, and you'll want to tack it all back just to make that look go away. Don't take it back. Say what you need to say. Be kind, be honest, and be firm. They deserve the truth even if the truth is painful. And you deserve to stop performing a role that has been suffocating you. The conversation ends, and then the real work begins. The first weeks are disorienting. Everything that was shared has to be divided. The routines you built they have to be unlearned. The apartment that held both of you holds only you now, and the silence is different from the silence you remember. You will second-guess yourself constantly. In the middle of the night when the bed feels too big. On Saturday mornings when there's no one to make coffee for. During every ordinary moment that you shared and is now yours alone. This is normal. This is the cost of choosing yourself. It doesn't mean you were wrong. Something strange happens after the initial grief settles. You start to remember who you were, the music you stopped listening to because they didn't like it. The friends you drifted away from because couple time consumed everything. The parts of yourself you folded up and put away to fit into our relationship that never quite fit you, those parts start to unfold, slowly at first, then faster. You rediscover interests you forgot you had. You have thoughts that are just yours, not filtered through the lens of someone else's opinions. You wake up and the day is entirely yours to shape. This is what freedom feels like. Not the absence of love, but the presence of yourself. At some point, you'll be ready to look for love again, or maybe you won't be. Maybe you'll discover that partnership isn't what you want after all, that the life you're building alone is full enough to sustain you. Both options are valid. The point of leaving convenience love isn't to find someone else. It's to find yourself. What you do with yourself once you've found her is entirely up to you. But if you do look for love again, you'll be looking from a different place. Not from desperation, not from fear of being alone, not from the need to fill a void that only you can fill. You'll be looking from wholeness, from a place of wanting, not needing, from the understanding that another person is an addition to your life, not the foundation of it. That's a much better place to fall in love from. I want to tell you something that you need to hear. You are allowed to want more. You are allowed to want a love that makes your heart beat faster even after years together. You are allowed to want a partner who still looks at you like you're the most interesting person in the room. You are allowed to want desire and connection and passion and everything else the world told you wasn't realistic. These things exist. They're not common and they require work and they don't look like the movies. But they're real. People have them. You could have them, but not if you stay where you are. Not if you keep convincing yourself that this flatline is as good as it gets. Not if you sacrifice your aliveness on the altar of someone else's comfort. The courage to want more is the courage to believe you deserve more. And you do, even if it's scary, even if it hurts, even if everyone around you thinks you're making a mistake. You deserve a love that feels like living. Go find it. PRTTHREF fantasy, the love that never existed except in your mind. TCHAPTERNINE, you fell in love with a ghost has a version of them that lives in your head. They're kinder there, more attentive, more everything you need them to be. This version says the right things and shows up in the right ways and loves you exactly how you want to be loved. The problem is that this version doesn't exist, never did. You invented them, filled in the blanks they left with your own longing, built a whole person out of glimpses and guesses and desperate hope. And then you fell in love with your own creation. This is fantasy love, the cruelest trick the heart plays on itself. A relationship with someone who was never real. A romance conducted almost entirely in your imagination. We fall in love with ghosts for a simple reason. Ghosts can be anything we want them to be. Real people are complicated. They have moods and limitations and bad days. They say the wrong thing. They forget important moments. They fail us in small ways that accumulate into disappointment. Real people require us to adjust our expectations, to accept imperfection, to love what's actually there rather than what we wish was there. Ghosts ask nothing of us. We can project whatever we want onto them. Their silences become depth. Their distance becomes mystery. Their inconsistency becomes evidence of a complex inner life we're special enough to understand. Every absence is an invitation to fill the space with our fantasies, and fantasies are always perfect. That's what makes them dangerous. Think about how much you actually know about them, not the version you've constructed, the actual person. You know the highlight reel, the moments they chose to share, the carefully curated glimpses of who they want to be. You know how they present themselves when they're trying to impress you, which is not the same as knowing who they are when no one's watching. Everything else you invented, their motivations, their feelings, the meaning behind their actions. You took the data points they gave you and connected them into a story that made sense, but it was your story, not theirs, your interpretation, your narrative, your ghost wearing their face. This is the terrifying truth about fantasy love. You might be deeply in love with someone you've never actually met. The real them is a stranger. The one you love is a fiction. Fantasy love preys on potential. It sees who they could rather than who they are. It falls in love with the best possible version of a person and then waits for that person to show up. They're so smart, they could be brilliant if they applied themselves. They're so charming they'd be incredible if they were more consistent. They have so much potential, if only they'd change this one thing or heal from that one wound or finally become what you know they could be. And here's the trap. Potential isn't a person, potential is a projection. You've looked at what they are and decided it's not good enough, so you've invented a future version worth loving, and know you are in a relationship with someone who doesn't exist yet and might never. The cruel irony is that by loving their potential, you're not loving them at all. You're loving a fantasy that requires them to become someone different. That's not acceptance. That's rejection dressed up as soap. I need to tell you something that will hurt. They've probably been showing you who they are all along, you just refused to see it. The cancelled plans weren't mysterious circumstances, they were choices. The mixed signals weren't complicated feelings, they were a lack of commitment. The half-hearted efforts weren't a person struggling to open up, they were exactly as much as they wanted to give. You saw all of this. You just told yourself a different story, one where their behavior was temporary, where the real them was hiding underneath, waiting to emerge. Where if you just loved them enough, long enough, patiently enough, they'd finally become who you needed them to be. They were never hiding, you were just looking at a ghost you created instead of the person standing in front of you. Fantasy love often happens with people who are unavailable. That's not coincidence, it's causation. Unavailability creates space for fantasy. When Somion is fully present and consistently showing up, there's no room for projection. You see them clearly, you know who they are. The mystery evaporates because they're actually there. But when someone is distant or inconsistent or emotionally absent, your imagination floods into their gaps. Their unavailability becomes a canvas. Their silence becomes a screen. Every moment they're not there, you're filling in the void with whoever you need them to be. This is why available people sometimes feel boring. They're not mysterious because there's no mystery, they're just present. And presence, it turns out, is less intoxicating than absence when you've learned to love ghosts. The saddest part of fantasy love is how much of your life you can spend in it. Months, years, entire decades sometimes, because the relationship is happening mostly in your head, it can go on indefinitely. You don't need them to participate, you don't even need them to know. You can sustain a complete romantic narrative with nothing more than occasional contact and unlimited imagination. And while you're busy loving a ghost, you're reminiscing the people who are actually standing in front of you. The ones who want to be seen for who they are, not who you might invent them to be. The ones offering real connection that you can't receive because her heart is full of someone who was never there. Fantasy love doesn't just waste time. It steals the time that could have been spent on something real. Here is the question that cuts through the fantasy. If they were exactly who they've shown themselves to be, no potential, no future improvement, no hidden depths, would you still want them, not the version in your head, the actual person with their actual behavior as they've actually been? If this is all there is forever, is this enough? If the answer is no, then you're not in love with them. You're in love with a ghost, a projection, a story you've been writing where they play the lead role but they've never agreed to the script. It's time to stop writing. It's time to see who's actually there, even if the truth is that no one is. LCHAPTERTE and the story you wrote and cast them along before you met them, you had a story. 8 and plate for love that you built from movies songs and books and the relationships you witnessed growing up. A set of expectations about how it would feel when you finally found your person. A script waiting for someone to play the lead, and then they walked in and you thought, there you are, I've been waiting for you, but you weren't waiting for them. You were waiting for the character. And as soon as they arrived, you started forcing them into a role they never auditioned for. Everyone does this to some extent. We all have ideas about what love should look like, and when we meet Somion promising, we start fitting them into that picture. It's how human attraction works. We see potential and we project possibility, but fantasy love takes this further. It doesn't just project possibility, it replaces reality entirely. The person in front of you stops mattering. What matters is the character you've written them as, the role you need them to play in the story of your life. You stop listening to what they actually say because it doesn't match the script. You reinterpret their behavior to fit your narrative. When they do something that contradicts the character you've created, you explain it away. Temporary setback, external circumstances. Not who they really are, the real them becomes an inconvenience, an obstacle to the love story you're determined to tell. The stories we write are usually about healing. Theory attempts to get something we missed, to correct something that went wrong, to finally receive what was denied to us when we were too young to go looking for it ourselves. If you grew up with an absent father, your story might need a man who chooses you completely. If you were raised by a critical mother, your story might need a partner who accepts you unconditionally. If you were the overlooked middle child, your story might need someone who makes you feel like the center of the universe. These stories are powerful because they're rooted in real pain. The longing is legitimate. The need is authentic. The problem isn't that you want the settings, it's that you've decided a specific person must provide them, whether they're capable of it or not. You've cast them as the healer of your oldest wounds. They didn't apply for that job. They probably don't even know the position exists. There's a moment in every fantasy love when reality breaks through, when the person does something sockily themselves that you can't rewrite it to fit their script. Maybe they forget something important. Maybe they say something careless. Maybe they simply fail to read your mind the way the character you wrote would have. Something small that shouldn't matter but does, because it shatters the illusion for a second. You have a choice in that moment. You can see them, really see them, as they actually are, separate from the story you've imposed on them. Or you can double down on the fantasy, explain it away, add a new chapter to justify their behavior, keep the script alive. Most of us double down. Reality is disappointing. The fantasy is everything we need. So we choose the fantasy again and again until we've buried the real person so deep we've forgotten they exist. The people we cast in our stories rarely know they've been cast. They're just living their lives, making their choices, being themselves. They have no idea that across town someone has written them into a romantic epic where they play the lead. This is why fantasy love is fundamentally unfair. You've created expectations they never agreed to meet. You've written promises they never made. You're measuring them against a standard they don't know exists, and finding them lacking when they fail to live up to the character you invented. And when they finally disappoint you enough that the fantasy collapses, you feel betrayed, as if they broke an agreement. As if they let you down. But they didn't break anything. You built something on top of them without their consent and then blamed them when it fell. The hardest part of waking up from a fantasy isn't admitting that they weren't who you thought they were. It's admitting that you never really saw them at all. You spent all that time and energy on someone you invented. The late-night thoughts, the careful analyses of their texts, the dreams about your future all of it directed at a fiction. A ghost with their face. It's embarrassing. It's heartbreaking. It makes you question your own judgment, your own perception, your own ability to see clearly when desire is involved. But here's the thing, everyone does this. Everyone has projected a story onto someone who didn't fit it. Everyone has loved a character more than a person. You're not uniquely broken. You're just human doing what humans do when they're desperate for love to look the way they need it to look. Forgiving yourself for the fantasy is part of growing past it. The story you've been telling has to end, not because it's wrong to want love, but because the story has become a barrier to finding it. As long as you're casting people in pre-written roles, you'll never see who they actually are. As long as you are looking for a character, you'll overlook the humans standing right in front of you. As long as the script matters more than reality, every relationship will be a fantasy doomed to disappoint. Burning the script is terrifying. Without the story, who do you look for? What do you want? How do you recognize love when it doesn't match the template? The answer is, you learn a new way of seeing. One that starts with who someone actually is rather than who you need them to be. One that stays curious rather than jumping to conclusions. One that treats love as a discovery rather than a confirmation. It's harder than following a script. It's also the only way to find something real. TCHAPTERELEVE, and when they finally show you who they are, a fantasy collapses in a single moment. It might take months or years of evidence to accumulate, but the collapse itself is instant. 1 second you believe in the person you invented. The next second, you can't unsee the stranger who was standing there all along. Maybe they say something that the character you created would never say. Maybe they make a choice so clearly selfish that no amount of rewriting can explain it away. Maybe you simply wake up one morning and spell is broken, and you look at them and think, who are you? Not who you pretended to be. Not who I needed you to be. Who are you actually? The answer is devastating, because the answer is they've been telling you all along. When someone shows you who they are, believeth them the first time. Maya Angelou said that. People quote it constantly, post it on Instagram, nod along in therapy, and then they go right back to not believing what they're being shown because believing is inconvenient. Believing means giving up the fantasy. Believing means accepting that this person you've invested so much in isn't who you decided they were. The first time someone shows you they're unreliable, you make excuses. The second time, you look for explanations. The third time, you start to sense a pattern but tell yourself patterns can be broken. The fourth, fifth, sixth time, you're so deep in the fantasy that admitting the truth would mean admitting you've been wrong about everything, so you keep not believing, keep reinterpreting, keep giving chances to someone who has already shown you, clearly and repeatedly, exactly what to expect from them. The betrayal you feel when the fantasy collapses isn't really about them. It's about you. It's about discovering that your own perception can't be trusted, that you can stare directly at someone and see a completely different person, that you're wanting can override you're seeing. This is humiliating. It makes you question every relationship you've ever been in, every judgment you've ever made. If you were this wrong about them, how wrong have you been about everything else? But here's what you need to know. You weren't seeing wrong. You were seeing what you needed to see. Your eyes took in the real person, and your heart replaced them with the fantasy because the fantasy was necessary. Because without it, you'd have had to face loneliness, or unworthiness, or the fear that maybe you'd never find what you were looking for. The fantasy was protection. It just protected you from the wrong things. There's a peculiar grief that comes with losing a fantasy. It's not the same as losing a person, because you never really had the person. You had an invention, a projection, a beautiful lie you told yourself. And yet the grief is real. The future you imagined is gone. The feelings you felt were genuine, even if their object wasn't. The time you spent hopping and dreaming and planning can't be recovered. You're grieving something that never existed. That's a strange kind of loss. There's no funeral, no clear ending, no one to blame except yourself for believing so hard in something that was never there, but it still hurts. Don't let anyone tell you it shouldn't hurt just because it wasn't real. The pain is real, the loss is real, the hole left behind is real. The temptation after the fantasy collapses is to rebuild it, to find some explanation that lets you keep believing, to take this new information and somehow fold it into the old story. Maybe they were just having a bad day. Maybe there are circumstances I don't understand. Maybe if I give them more time, more love, more patience, the person I invented will finally appear. That's the last gasp of the fantasy, fighting for survival. It doesn't want to die. It will offer you any rationalization, any excuse, any thread of hope to keep itself alive. Don't take it. The fantasy has cost you enough. Don't let it cost you more. When they finally show you who they are, you have to believe them. Even when it breaks something inside you. Even when believing means letting go of everything you hoped was true. Even when the truth is lonelier than the lie. There's a moment after the collapse when you see them clearly for the first time. Not through the filter of your needs. Not through the lens of who you wanted them to be. Just them as they actually are, with all their limitations and choices and ordinary humanity. It's often underwhelming. The person who loomed so large in your fantasy turns out to be just a person. Someone with their own damage, their own blindness, their own small life. Not a villain, usually not even particularly bad. Just someone who wasn't what you invented them to be. This clarity is its own kind of freedom. You see them, finally, and in seeing them you can start to let them go. Not with hatred, not with bitterness, just with the quiet acknowledgement that they were never. Yours, the person you loved never existed, and the person who does exist doesn't belong in your life. What do you do with all that love you felt? Where does it go now that its object has dissolved? It goes back to you. That's the answer no one tells you. All that capacity for love, all that depth of feeling, all that devotion you poured into a fantasy, it came from you. It was always yours. You just pointed it at Somion who couldn't hold it. Now you take it back. You redirect it toward yourself, toward your own healing, toward building a life that doesn't require someone else's validation to feel complete. The love doesn't disappear, it just changes direction, and eventually when you're ready you can offer it again. To someone real this time, someone you see clearly, someone who sees you back. That's the promise on the other side of the fantasy's collapse. Love that's actually mutual, connection that's actually shared. A relationship with Somion who exists rather than someone you invented. It's worth the grief to get there. ACHAPTERTWELV e-learning to love what's real. After you've loved a ghost, reality feels flat. After you have built cathedrals in your imagination, ordinary buildings look small. After you've experienced the intoxication of fantasy, sobriety feels like loss. Call it the hangover of fantasy love, the world without projection, the experience of meeting people without immediately writing them into stories, the strange emptiness of seeing clearly. You might think something is wrong with you. Why can't you feel those heights anymore? Why does Sevrione seem ordinary? Where did the magic go? The magic was never real. What you're feeling now is the absence of the drug. And like any withdrawal, it takes time to recalibrate what normal actually feels like. Real love grows slower than fantasy love. It doesn't hit like a wave. It accumulates like sediment, small moments layering on top of each other until one day you realize something solid has formed. This feels wrong if you're used to the instant intensity of fantasy. You meet someone kind and present and interested and you feel fine, pleasant, mildly attracted. Nothing like the consuming fire you remember. Your brain whispers, this can't be it. It's supposed to feel bigger than this. Supposed to make you lose your mind, but losing your mind was never love. Losing your mind was chemicals and projection and fear of abandonment. What you're feeling now, this quieter thing, might actually be the beginning of something real. Learning to love what's real requires a complete wiring of what you're looking for. Stop looking for intensity. Start looking for consistency. Anyone can make you feel something in armament of chemistry. The question is whether they keep showing up, whether their attention stays even. When the newness fades, whether they're still curious about you on an ordinary Wednesday 6 months from now. Stop looking for mystery, start looking for transparency. Mystery is just absence dressed up as intrigue. Someone who tells you clearly who they are, what they want, and how they feel. That's not boring, that's safe. And safe, it turns out, is not the enemy of passion. It's the foundation that allows passion to grow without fear. Stop looking for someone who completes you. Start looking for someone who complements you. The person who fills your void will eventually leave you emptier than they found you. The person who adds to your already full life will make that life richer without ever becoming its foundation. Real people disappoint you. That's the deal. They will fail to read your mind. They will say the wrong thing at the wrong time. They will have flaws that irritate you, habits that annoy you, limitations that frustrate you. Fantasy never disappoints because fantasy can be anything you need it to be, but reality has edges. Reality doesn't bend to fit your expectations. Reality requires you to love what is rather than what you imagined. The question isn't whether a real person will disappoint you, they will. The question is whether you can love them through the disappointment, whether you can see their flaws and choose them anyway, whether you can let them be human without punishing them for not being the fantasy. This is the skill that fantasy love never teaches you. It teaches you to love perfection. Reality requires you to love imperfection. They're entirely different muscles. There's a beauty in being seen clearly and loved in a way, a beauty that fantasy can never replicate. In fantasy love, you're loved for who you pretend to be. You curate yourself, hide your ugliness, perform the version of you that might make them stay. The love you receive is conditional on maintaining the illusion. In real love, you're known, fully. The person has seen your worst moods, your deepest fears, your most embarrassing failures. They've watched you be selfish and scared and small, and they've chosen to stay, not because you're perfect, because you're not. Because if you've decided that the real you is worth loving, that kind of love doesn't give you a high, it gives you something better, a place to rest, a place where you don't have to perform, a relationship where you can finally stop auditioning and just be. Learning to love what's real starts with learning to see what's real. That means staying present, staying curious. Resisting the urge to project your needs onto whoever's in front of you. When you meet someone new, notice when your mind starts writing stories. Notice when you start filling in blanks with assumptions. Notice when you catch yourself falling for someone you've invented rather than someone you've actually gotten to know. Slow down. Ask questions. Listen to the answers. Really listen, not just waiting for confirmation of what you want to hear. Let the person reveal themselves gradually, instead of rushing to conclusions about who they are. This is harder than projecting. It requires patience you might not have, but it's also how you build something that lasts, not on fantasy but on knowledge, not on what you wish was true but on what actually is. Real love is not a downgrade from fantasy love, it's an upgrade, but it takes time to see that. Fantasy love is a firework, bright and brief and leaving nothing behind but smoke. Real love is a fire in a hearth, steadier, warmer, capable of sustaining you through seasons that fireworks couldn't survive. You've been chasing fireworks. You've been standing in the cold watching explosions in the sky and calling that warmth. No wonder you're exhausted. No wonder you felt alone even when you thought you were in love. Real love offers something different. Not the drama, not the intensity, but the quiet accumulation of days spent with someone who is actually there, someone who knows you, someone you know, someone you've seen clearly and chosen freely. It looks ordinary from the outside, but from Thane's side, it's everything you were ever looking for. You just couldn't see it because you were too busy staring at ghosts. PRRTFOURTHE, love Thathiels, what remains after the destruction. ICHAPTERTHIRTEEN, you have to meet yourself before you meet them after the wreckage. There's a temptation to rush back out, to find someone new, to prove you can still be loved, still be wanted, still be chosen. The empty space left by the last disaster feels unbearable, and you want to fill it as quickly as possible. Don't. Not yet. Not until you've met the person who should have been the most important all along, yourself. You've spent so much energy learning other people, studying their moods, anticipating their needs, reshaping yourself to fit their expectations. When did you last spend that energy learning who you actually are? The work of becoming whole isn't glamorous. It doesn't photograph well. No one writes songs about the months you spend alone, figuring out what you actually want when no one else's preferences are influencing you. But it's the most important work you'll ever do, because until you know who you are outside of our relationship, you'll keep losing yourself inside of them. Until you've built a life that satisfies you on its own terms, you'll keep desperately needing someone else to make it meaningful. Until you've met yourself fully, your desires, your boundaries, your values, your ones, you'll keep handing those discoveries over to people who haven't earned them. You can't give someone your whole self if you don't know what your whole self is. Asterisks start with the simple questions, the ones that seem obvious until you try to answer them without referencing someone else. What do you want? Not what would make them happy, not what would make your family proud, not what society says you should want by now. What do you, in the quiet of your own mind, actually desire? What do you believe, not the beliefs you inherit or absorbed or adopted to fit in? What do you actually think about love, about life, about what makes it all worthwhile, what makes you feel alive? Not the activities you've been doing because someone else liked them, not the hobbies you kept because they impressed people. What lights you up when no one's watching? These questions are harder than they sound. You might not have answers. You might discover that you've been living someone else's life for so long that you've forgotten how to want things for yourself. That's okay. That's where the work begins. Get to know your patterns, not to judge them but to understand them. Why did you fall for obsession? What wound did it promise to heal? What part of you believed that intensity meant love, that chaos meant connection? Why did you settle for convenience? What fear made you accept less than you deserved? What voice inside you said that wanting more was greedy, that feeling alive was too much to ask? Why did you love ghosts? What made it easier to invent someone than to see them clearly? What did the fantasy protect you from having to face? Your patterns aren't random. They're strategies you develop to survive, to get your needs met, to protect yourself from pain. They made sense once, they might not make sense anymore. But you can't change them until you understand what they were trying to do for you. Learn to be alone without being lonely. This is Thescal that changes everything. Aloneness is a state. Physical absence offer the people. It's Friday night in an empty apartment. It's eating dinner at a table set for one. It's waking you up in a bed that only has your shape in it. Loneliness is a feeling. It's the ache of disconnection. It's feeling unseen even in a crowd. It's the hollow sense that no one really knows you, really gets you, really cares whether you exist. These are not the same thing. You can be alone without being lonely. You can also be surrounded by people and suffocating in loneliness. The two states are independent of each other. Learning to be comfortably alone, to enjoy your own company, to fill your own time, to not need someone else's presence to feel okay, this is what frees you. Because once you can be alone without desperation, you'll stop choosing partners from desperation. You'll choose from desire instead, from genuine wanting rather than fear of emptiness. Build a life you actually want to live, not a placeholder life while you wait for someone to arrive. Not a half-life that only becomes whole when partnership completes it. A real, full, standing on its own 2 feet life. Fill it with things that matter to you. Work that means something. Friendships that nourish you, hobbies that light you up. Experiences that make you glad to be alive. When someone new eventually shows up, they won't be arriving at an empty house. They'll be joining a life already in progress. They'll be adding to something rich rather than filling something hollow. They'll be a guest you're inviting in, not a rescue you've been waiting for. That changes everything about who you attract and what kind of relationship you can build. Heal what needs healing. This is the part no one wants to do. The childhood wounds that make you chase unavailable people. The abandonment fears that make you cling to anyone who might stay. The low self-worth that makes you grateful for crumbs when you outserve the whole loaf. These don't disappear on their own. They don't get better just because time passes or you find summonness. They go underground. They hide until a new relationship triggers them. They sabotage from the shadows. Therapy helps. Honest self-reflection helps. Time spent understanding why you do what you do helps. The goal isn't to become perfect. That's impossible. The goal is to become aware enough that your wounds stop running your love life without your consent. This process takes as long as it takes. There's no shortcut, no life hack, no way to speed through the becoming. You might be alone for months. You might be alone for years. The timeline isn't the point. The point is that when you finally meet someone worth loving, you'll show up as someone worth loving back, not the desperate version who needs them to fill a void. Not the incomplete version who's looking for someone else to make them whole. Not the wounded version who will recreate the same painful patterns in a new relationship. The healed version. The whole version. The version who knows who they are and what they want and won't settle for anything less. That version of you is worth waiting for. Worth building. Worth becoming. Do the work. WCHAPTERFOURTEEN. Love without destruction. And you've only known destructive love. Healthy love feels foreign. It doesn't match the template. It doesn't trigger the familiar alarms. It sits there calm and available, and some part of you doesn't trust it. Where's the drama? Where's the chase? Where's the anxiety that you've learned to interpret as excitement? Nowhere. Because healthy love doesn't work that way, and that's the whole point. Healthy love is boring by the standards of destructive love. It doesn't give you the highs because it doesn't give you the lows. There's no roller coaster, just a train moving steadily toward a destination you actually want to reach. At first, this boredom might feel like a lack, like something's missing. Like maybe you don't really love them because it doesn't hurt enough, but that's your calibration talking. Your nervous system has been trained to equate intensity with love, drama with connection, instability with passion. Healthy love doesn't register on those scales. It operates on entirely different frequencies. Give it time. Your definition of exciting will shift. You'll start finding excitement in reliability. In someone who shows up when they say they will. In the absence of the anxiety you used to mistake for attraction. Peace is its own kind of thrill once you've been told. In healthy love you don't disappear. That's the first difference you'll notice. Your friends don't fade away. Your hobbies don't get abandoned. Your identity doesn't get swallowed by the relationship. You remain yourself, the same person you were before, just with someone walking alongside you. This feels strange if you're used to merging. If you're used to becoming a we so quickly that you forget there was ever an I. If you're used to making someone else your whole world within weeks. Healthy love doesn't ask for your whole world. It asks for a place in your world. It wants to be important to you, not to replace everything else that's important to you. It understands that a partnership between two whole people is stronger than a merger of two halves. You can breathe in healthy love. That's the second difference. No constant checking. No anxiety about whether they still want you. No reading between the lines of free text, searching for signs that they're pulling away. Just ease. The assumption that they're there until they tell you otherwise. This ease isn't indifference. They still matter to you. You still want to see them, talk to them, be closer to them. But the wanting isn't desperate. It doesn't feel like survival. It feels like preference. You want them in your life. You don't need them to have a life, That's the difference that changes everything. Conflict in healthy love looks different too. There's no screaming, no storming out, no threats to leave every time things get hard. Disagreements happen, they're inevitable between two separate people with separate opinions, but they don't feel like at the end of the world. They don't make you question everything, you argue about the issue, not each other's character. You can be angry without being cruel. You can disagree without threatening the foundation of the relationship. You fight like two people who are on the same team having a disagreement, not licking enemies looking for weaknesses. And afterward, you repair. You talk about what happened. You apologize when you're wrong. You feel closer for having gone through it rather than traumatized by the experience.